Hi, I'm Emily Yucht, and welcome to this week's extended interviews from around campus for BMB interviews. Hi, I'm Emily Yucht with this week's Around Campus. Today I'm joined with a special and sweet guest, ice cream extraordinaire and Merrick's very own Jerry Greenfield from Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream. So, we know you and Ben met in middle school. How did you meet?
Ben and I went to Merrick Avenue Junior High School. So we met in seventh grade. We were in gym class together and we met running around the track because we were the two slowest, fattest kids in the class.
Did you know at the time that you'd build an ice cream empire together?
No, I think all Ben and I knew back then were we weren't very good at running around the track, and we both liked to eat quite a bit. And, uh, several years later, Ben actually became a mobile vending person. He and a friend of ours drove a Pied Piper truck in the summer one year, or maybe even 2 years while we were in high school. So Ben had experience in high school.
What's it like being in business with one of your best friends from middle school for over 50 years?
It is great hanging out with Ben and doing business with him. I mean, we're much more friends than business partners, and we always have been. And knowing somebody that long and being friends with somebody that long is really lucky, especially because in a way we grew up together. Meeting at 13, I don't know about you guys, but when I was 13, I felt like I had no idea what was going on. I mean, I was kind of clueless. And so, we've kind of grown up in our lives together, going from clueless and experiencing a whole bunch of different stuff. I mean, I think some people, when they're friends for a long time, they don't see each other for a long time and they don't go through that many things together. You might go through things together at a certain point in your life, but Ben and I have gone through things together for the last 50 years.
You and Ben graduated from high school in the 1960s. What was it like to go to high school here in Bellmore-Merrick back in the 60s?
So Ben and I went to Calhoun. We graduated from Calhoun in 1969. We were, what should I say? We were kind of nerds. We weren't very popular. We weren't very good socially. Ben was the editor of our high school yearbook when he was a senior. Uh, and I was kind of a guy who studied a lot, and we just weren't a whole lot of fun. We were, I guess Ben was more fun than me. I've always been pretty dull.
Aw. Do you come back to Long Island much? What's different from when you lived here?
I haven't been back to Long Island for a few years. What I noticed the last time I was in Merrick was, probably 5 or 7 years ago. Uh, the trees are much bigger and older. The town looks nicer. I think, when Ben and I were in Merrick, it was a much younger town, and there was a lot of construction in South Merrick and South Bellmore by the water. Uh, Kennedy High School didn't exist when we first started there. They were building a new junior high school when we were there, Brookside, which I don't know if it's there anymore. So there was a lot of growth in Merrick, a lot of young families moving in. There were always tons of kids to play with. So it was a great place to grow up.
That's nice. So, is the ice cream parlor that you went to as a kid still in business?
We used to go into downtown Merrick on Merrick Avenue. There was I guess it was more of an Italian ice place called Billmar's. And I'm pretty sure Billmar's has not been there for a long time.
So, how did two kids from Merrick end up making Vermont's finest ice cream? What led to the two of you to Burlington, Vermont to start your business?
So as I mentioned, Ben and I went to high school and graduated from Calhoun in '69. I went to college and I was in college for 4 years straight. I was pre-med trying to get into medical school and I never got into medical school. Ben went to several colleges and dropped out of several colleges. Ben was not a really big believer in college, and so he was, prior to us starting an ice cream shop. Ben was working in a residential school in upstate New York for adolescents, and that school went out of business. So Ben tried to become a potter. Nobody would buy his pottery. I was trying to get into medical school and never got into medical school. So Ben and I were pretty much failing at everything we were trying to do. And we thought, boy, let's try to do something fun where we can be our own bosses. And since we always like to eat, we just thought we would do something with food, and we picked homemade ice cream. And as we were looking around for a place to open up, we've wanted to find a place where there weren't any other ice cream parlors. And we moved up to Burlington, Vermont. There weren't any ice cream parlors because it was so cold here all the time. we didn't really understand that when it's really cold, people don't eat ice cream.
What was the first flavor?
The first flavor we made, you could probably guess this: vanilla.
Exciting.
It's still the most popular flavor in the world. And, vanilla is actually a very good test when you're trying ice cream to see the quality of the ice cream, because vanilla is such a subtle flavor and it allows the taste of all the other ice cream ingredients to come through. Sometimes if you have a really strongly flavored ice cream, it can cover up what may be some off flavors or some flavor defects in ice cream. But with vanilla, you can't hide anything. So that's really the way to figure out if ice cream is good or not.
How did you make Ben and Jerry's stand out from other ice creams when you started?
When we started, we were a little homemade ice cream parlor. We were making ice cream on the premises in the shop in a 5-gallon rock, salt, and ice cream freezer, which is kind of like a homemade ice cream machine. Only it's, makes 5 gallons at a time instead of a half a gallon or a gallon. And it's got a motor on it, so you don't have to crank it. That's a good thing. And so we were using really good ingredients, a lot of cream, and it was all natural ingredients and not much air in the ice cream. So it was very dense and rich and creamy and chewy. And then I think the other thing that people think about for Ben and Jerry's is it's got big chunks of cookies and candies in it. And that was because that's the way Ben likes ice cream. Ben always wanted more and bigger chunks. As far as Ben's concerned, the bigger the chunk, the better.
So that's actually kind of funny. Sorry, that's not an actual question. I just thought that was funny.
It is funny. I mean, the funny part about it is that Ben designed all the ice cream flavors for Ben and Jerry's in the beginning, and I was the guy who was making the ice cream. And so Ben would suggest I make something, I would make it to the point where he really liked it. And what's interesting about Ben is that he can't really taste. He has no sense of smell. And when you can't smell, you can't really taste because they're very tied together. So because Ben can't taste, he always wanted the flavors to be very strongly flavored so that even he could tell what they were. And then he also likes really big chunks of cookies and candies because I guess when you can't taste, he became very attuned to textures and texture variation. So he always wanted the contrast between smooth, creamy ice cream and crunchy, chunky stuff in his ice cream.
That's so cool.
How did you and Ben take your one store and turn it into a brand recognized around the world?
Ben and Jerry's was a shop for several years. We started in 1978, and we were located in Burlington, Vermont. As I mentioned, it's very cold in Burlington. There's a very short ice cream season there. And we weren't really doing enough business to stay in business. And so we started selling ice cream to some of the local restaurants around that were asking for it to try to stay in business. And that helped a little, but it still wasn't doing that well. And Ben eventually came up with the idea that we should package our ice cream into pint containers. And that way we could sell it to mom and pop grocery stores and supermarkets. So we started doing that in Vermont and New England. And over the years, because the ice cream is so good and because the company, I think, has a real social mission, the company has flourished. It's now been 42 years, so it's not exactly an overnight sensation. Ben and I are old guys.
Ben & Jerry's has been known as a socially responsible company, working to do good in both communities large and small. For example, they have done work with the World Wildlife Foundation on climate change and on fighting for marriage equality. Why was it important for you to incorporate your values into your business?
When we started, I think our idea was to be a community-based ice cream shop. So a place where people could come and hang out and, be, the idea we would be throwing small festivals or events and mostly trying to be good neighbors. And I think as the company started to get bigger and become more successful, we realized how powerful business is and the role that business plays in the country and in society. And we wanted to use the power of our business to try to address social and environmental concerns. Business, especially big business, tends to think about trying to make as much money as it can. And we always felt like business is this powerful force in the society, and it needs to be responsible for more than just thinking about its own self-interest.
Did this pose problems for you as a business?
Well, one thing that's interesting is not everybody agrees with all the positions that Ben and Jerry's takes. You mentioned marriage equality. When Ben and Jerry's was first supporting marriage equality, it was a pretty controversial subject. Now I think the majority of the people in the US support marriage equality. But not everybody likes that. And 4 years ago, Ben and Jerry's came out in support of Black Lives Matter before that was really popular. And so often the company will hear from people that don't agree with it, and yet having those values and standing up for what you believe in, the company continues to be more and more successful, even though not everybody agrees with it. And, I think the message there is that you're never going to make everybody happy. It's more important to stand for what you believe in than to not stand for anything.
When you and Ben owned the company, you had a rule that the highest paid employee couldn't make more than 5 times the lowest paid employee. Why did you do that? Did it work the way that you had hoped?
So that was something we referred to as a compressed salary ratio. At the time, I think CEOs of companies were making so much more than the average employee, and we felt like that was wrong. That the success of a company depends on the work that everybody does, and so we wanted to not limit how much people at the top of the company could make, but we wanted to say the work that everybody does is valuable. And as the people at the top of the company make more money, they should bring along the people at the bottom of the company as well. And so we did that for a while. That was the 5-to-1 salary ratio. At some point, we adjusted it to 7-to-1. But ultimately, we were not able to make that policy work. That we found that having to recruit people into the company, we needed to pay what was essentially market rates, the same thing that any other company was paying. So it was a noble experiment that did not succeed.
So let's get to the important questions here. What's your favorite flavor and why?
Emily, it's extremely important to talk about flavors. We have to talk about ice cream and flavors.
Of course.
My favorite flavor is Americone Dream, which is vanilla ice cream with a caramel swirl and fudge covered pieces of waffle cones. I think last year, the most popular flavor of Ben & Jerry's was half baked. I think cookie dough was in the top 5. Cherry Garcia is in the top 5. Chocolate fudge brownie is in the top 5. And I think also Tonight Dough is in the top 5. And the big surprise for me, I think after those top 5 comes strawberry cheesecake, which I never think of as a very exciting flavor. It's delicious, but I had no idea it was that popular.
And the least favorite flavor?
Oh, we love all our children equally. Isn't that what all our parents say? But I honestly don't eat much Cherry Garcia. It's kind of funny. I don't know. I tend to go more towards caramelly things and not fruit kind of things.
Cherry Garcia is one of my favorites, but
What's the flavor that was just a terrible mistake and should never have been made in the first place?
is there any?
Absolutely. Many years ago, Ben & Jerry's made a peanut butter and jelly flavor that tasted just like peanut butter and jelly, which, I think is great as a sandwich. It's not great as an ice cream. Ben also believes that you need to be making a wide enough variety of flavors. Nobody likes all of them. If somebody likes all your flavors, you're just not spreading your wings wide enough, because people have very different tastes, and you need to go beyond just the very, very popular flavors.
So while talking about mistakes, I'm sure along the way there were other mistakes with the business that you and Ben made.
What was one of them, and how did you fix it and move on?
Well, let me first say that we've made tons and tons of mistakes, and that it's important to make mistakes. Mistakes are how you learn. Anytime you try to do something new that you don't know how to do, chances are you're not going to succeed at it right away. That's that's the process of innovation. You try something, sometimes it works, usually it doesn't work. You try to learn from that, you make improvements, and eventually you start getting things figured out. If you only do things that you know how to do, you're not learning and growing. So I'm going to start with that. Among the mistakes we have made, boy, uh, it's hard to know where to start. Um, one of the great promotional schemes we came up with in Vermont during the winter when it was so cold and people weren't buying ice cream. We came up with a plan called Popsid Biswee, which stood for penny off per Celsius degree below zero winter extravaganza. So the way that worked was when the temperature got below freezing, which was 32 Fahrenheit, but 0 degrees Celsius, we started taking money off the price of an ice cream cone. And the colder it got, the more money we took off the price of a cone. But not even that was enough to get people to buy ice cream in the winter. I mean, I don't know, I'd say it was a mistake. It was just a failed attempt.
In a lifetime of ideas, what do you think your greatest idea was and why?
Well, I would put Popsid Biswee way up at the top, but I think the other idea that has been great is trying to use the power of the business to address human needs, to try to say that business needs to do more than think about itself, and to try to talk about issues, whether it's about racial injustice or climate change, and to be willing to be out on the edge and potentially have people not agree with you, but to stand by what you believe anyway. I think Ben and Jerry's has been a real pioneer in that.
So,
What advice would you have for a kid graduating in the world today?
I would say start small. I think, Ben and I started very small, and there's a tendency to want to do things on a really grand scale, but there's a benefit to starting small. You don't need a lot of money to start up. And when you start small, you tend to have to figure everything out yourself. So you learn things really quickly. The other thing I would suggest is do something that you believe in, something that's aligned with your values. Anytime you start something up, particularly a business, you're going to run into difficult times. And I think if you're doing something that you're passionate about, that is close to your heart, that will help bring you through those difficult times.
so there are many students who aren't looking for business, but people graduating today, especially my age, are very worried about the state of the world and are kind of scared to get into the real and adult world that we're being pushed into. Do you have any advice for them?
Jump in, baby. First of all, I would say the so-called adult world, it's not really as adult as it sometimes seems. Uh, you know, People like myself, and when you see so-called grown-ups out there and adults, they may seem like grown-ups and adults on the outside, but a lot of times on the inside, they still see themselves and feel like high school kids.
Okay, thank you so much. So those are all the questions that I have written down that are going to be on the show. But this is just a personal question I have. Do
Yes,
you wear the chunky donkeys like the Adidas sneakers?
I did not they were very, very hard to get, and I did not get any chunky donkeys.
Thank you so much for being here, Jerry. It has been a wonderful experience getting to learn from you about businesses and ice cream. Now back to you guys in the studio.